tell a couple stories from the area from a book that I just got. I'm gonna tell a few Sasquatch stories here. Let's go around to the back of the Jeep. I don't normally tell a whole lot of Sasquatch stories, but I do notice that a lot of the subscribers are not watching my other videos other than the Sasquatch thing. So if you guys do really want to support the channel, all you need to do is one thing for me, is that just watch our videos. So if you come around here, this is the book that I picked up during Sasquatch days. This is Sasquatch, the Apes Among Us. This is written by John Green. I am going to read a couple stories from this book. If you want to get this book yourself, it's a great book. I just started reading it myself. We will leave a link to this in the description. And I am an Amazon affiliate as well, so another way you can support the channel is use my link and purchase this book, and that will help support the channel. So I do get a small commission on that, so definitely check out the link. And also in the description we do have some other links from other people that we've talked about on the channel. Scott Carpenter, he has a bunch of books that I have the links there. Steve Isdale, as well as Ron Moorhead. So all their books are there. I'll keep adding books as we go when we talk about different topics and different people, and we'll set up a little book collection in the description for you guys. Something with John Green's book, something cool, he laid it out really well. If you go to page 475 here, it has the list of all the locations where encounters have happened. We go here and we have British Columbia. British Columbia is where the most encounters in this book have all happened, but there's some all over the States and Canada in here. So right now we are at Pitt Lake. We have 2 encounters at Pitt Lake. I just really wanted to show you that. I thought it was pretty cool how he laid all this out nicely. Pitt Lake, we're gonna go over these 2 stories today. My last knife I have from Brazil. This is again 100% water buffalo with the exotic Brazilian hardwoods through the handle. This is a full tang for added extra strength. This knife here is going to Sasquatch Randy. We were supposed to meet up and go camping. Randy, if you're watching this, I told you I have a gift for you. It's right here. Let's get together, let's go camping. And I'm gonna barbecue for you, my friend, and give you this knife and share stories. It's gonna be a good time. Again, with the giveaway, that knife is still up for grabs, so get on there, watch the videos, and comment on every one, and you can have a knife similar to this one.
While we were traveling through the dense berry growth, Green Hick suddenly stopped us and drew our attention to a large light brown creature about 8 feet high. Standing on its hind legs, pulling the berry bushes with one hand or paw towards him and putting the berries into his mouth with the other hand or paw. I stood wondering, and McRae and Green and Hicks were arguing. Hicks said, "It's a wild man," and McRae said, "It's a bear." The creature heard us and suddenly disappeared into the brush about 200 yards away. As far as I am concerned, the strange creature looked more like a human being. We've seen several black and brown bears on the trip, but that thing looked altogether different. Huge brown bears are known to be in Alaska, but have never been seen in the southern British Columbia area. I never have seen anything like this creature before or after this incident in 1915, in all my days of hunting and prospecting in British Columbia. Reports of such creatures being seen eating something have been rare, but there is another early British Columbia account of the Sasquatch eating berries, although it did not come to light until 1968. The man concerned, a retired insurance broker, wrote that about 35 years earlier he had been on a weekend trip to the head of Pitt Lake, just east of Vancouver, and that he and another man climbed out about 1,500 feet to the edge of a small plateau looking for interesting rocks. As they were sitting eating their lunch, a movement behind a thicket some quarter-mile away caught my eye, and I said, "Carty, there's something down there." He looked, then asked for the field glasses. We both thought it was a black bear feeding on berries. Then he exclaimed, "Here, look at its face." Although the glasses were quite plain, a human's face on a fur-clad body. "What the hell?" I said. "He must be a hermit of some kind, but look at the size of him," Cardi replied. "Wait until he leaves and let us go down there and look for tracks." So we waited. I don't think the creature saw us, though he or she may have sensed us, as presently it went away across the plateau and vanished among the rocks. We went down after a considerable interval and examined the rocks, which were quite distinct. Cardi looked pretty grim and said, "Let's go back. What have you just seen? Is it a Sasquatch?" "Don't mention this to anyone, not even your wife. No one will believe you. You will just be laughed at, and you will have a miserable time of it. Just forget the whole thing and keep it quiet." So I did. And I have, until now. In a later letter, this man told me that that plateau was stony, so that the tracks were not really good, but they seemed to be large human tracks with no claw marks. They were definitely not bear tracks. He and his friends were a bit apprehensive, and they did not search very long. The berries the creature was eating were a type of Oregon grape. When the thing left, he said, it shuffled off on 2 feet without haste. One of the most fascinating stories I have ever heard is told by Burns Yeomans of Darouche, British Columbia. Just so you don't get confused, story 2 has to do with a compilation of stories of Sasquatch being seen near and in water. So it's going to start off. I just didn't want you guys to be confused because there was previous stories beforehand describing the same kind of situation with the Sasquatches in and around water. So these are all encounters and stories from John Green's book. Here we go, story number 2. A story that could possibly indicate that sort of activity came in light in 1967 when the BC Provincial Museum issued a public appeal for information about hairy giants and huge tracks. It doesn't prove that the Sasquatches were actually in the water, but there was something certainly interesting going on. 2 brothers who are professional prospectors reported that they were traveling on foot at about 4,000 foot level in the rugged mountains northwest of Pitt Lake, British Columbia, in June 1965, when they encountered some fairly fresh tracks in the snow. The prints were enormous, twice as long as their own boots and as wide as the boot is long. They were perfectly flat and showed 4 clear toe imprints, with the big toe on the side of the foot like a man's. The stride was double a man's stride. Snow in the bottom of the footprints was tinted pink. Okay, here's a picture and a sketch from John Green's book on this story. The above picture shows a sketch, and the below picture shows an overlapping grizzly track. The result is about size and shape of an average Sasquatch track, but the extra toes in the middle mar the effect and the claws show clearly. Back to the story. Parallel to the tracks were 3 grooves in the snow. The prints were widely spaced from side to side, and there was a wide but shallow drag mark running along between them. Outside the line of the prints on either side, but close to them, were narrower and deeper grooves. The snow was old and hard, but both the prints and the outer drag marks sank in about 2 inches. One of the men sketched this in his notebook on the spot. They followed the trail up in the valley, and then they came to a small lake that was frozen over. The tracks led out on the ice to a place where a large hole had been made, with broken pieces of ice lifted out and piled around. Baffled, the men looked around side to side of the lake until they noticed in the trees on the other side a figure standing watching them. The thing was auburn in color except for its hands, where the color lightened gradually, almost to yellow. As sketched on the spot, It had human-shaped head set directly above square shoulders. Its forearms and hands bulged like canoe paddles. It was swaying slightly, as if shifting from foot to foot, and its hanging arms swayed too. They couldn't make out its face because of the distance, but the features seemed flat. It was just noon, and they sat down and had a cigarette and a chocolate bar while they watched it and tried to estimate its size. Counting sets of branches and evergreens, where it stood, and comparing them to those on their sides of the lake, they decided it was between 10 and 14 feet tall. It just continued to stand there, so finally they went on. When they came back later on, there were more tracks around, but the animal was gone. The following day, after climbing over the ridge into a plateau, they came to some very small lakes where there were a lot of smaller tracks, so old that all that was left of them was the compacted snow sticking up above the level of the melting snow around. Some of them were 18 inches long, and they led out to a place on a tiny lake where the snow had been pushed back and a hole more than 5 feet wide made in the ice. Other smaller tracks about 10 inches long did not go out on the ice. A few days later, one of the brothers went back to the spot with a newspaper reporter in a helicopter. They photographed the big tracks in the valley, which by then were badly melted out, and some saw fresher looking ones on the ridge but did not land. Those tracks led to the edge of a cliff, with no snow down below it. I've talked to some of the prospectors and seen his notes and sketches. I have also talked to the reporter, a man I had known for years before. But until about 10 years after this event, my inquiries have left me in no doubt that the men saw what they say they seen. But as to what it means, I don't know. Plainly, the creatures they saw had dragged some big objects to the lake, and presumably, since no such object was in sight, it had dumped it through the hole. But there was no clue as to what the object may have been. Only the two prospectors know exactly where the lake is, and the last I heard, they had never had an opportunity to go back to it. There is an additional possibility that the things that made the tracks were entering the water through the holes they had made in the ice. However, the holes in the ice are the easiest thing that they could spot by the plane, and both Reen and I have tried and failed, checking every lake within 50 miles of the area of these observations. So there is certainly no group of animals doing such a thing with any frequency. Okay, that's story number 2. That's pretty interesting. Sasquatch making a giant hole in the lakes, and I wonder what they're doing there. Maybe catching some fish somehow, or who knows, maybe getting fresh water even. Maybe all the fresh spring water's frozen up in the winter and they gotta dig a hole and possibly get some fresh drinking water from there. That's it for these 2 stories from John Green. Again, there will be a group of Sasquatch books in the description. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Cheers, and stay tuned to the next one.